So this is from the land of make-believe, and we began the hour by saying, if you wish upon a star. We're talking about the mind of Allen Iverson. I haven't talked about him in a while. The NBA legend who's moonlighting from time to time in that big three. At least last I heard he was. I don't know what he's doing these days. Anyway, Allen Iverson, back in the day, one of the greats of his era, a high-volume shooter, not a great percentage. But he believes that if you could go back in the Wayback Machine, that he would have been better at football than basketball. Now, I don't know if you heard this or not, perhaps not, but Allen Iverson says that he would have been a legend if he stayed with football. And that's just proof that I'm not making this up. This comes from the Shannon Sharpe podcast, whatever that is. But here is Allen Iverson with Shannon Sharpe, big FS1 guy, and here they are schmoozing. But this is Allen Iverson pointing out how good he would have been.
Not being cocky, not being arrogant. No, I know that I would have been a better player in football than I was in basketball. And that's not disrespecting basketball guys. That's not disrespecting the game that's done so much for me. I mean, I'm a household name. I'm a Hall of Famer in that sport. But football was my first love.
And he was joking that he probably would have even lifted weights if he had stuck with football. Now, Iverson was a total stud in high school. That doesn't guarantee anything in college or the NFL and football. But he was a two-sport star in Virginia. And at his high school, he led them to the state football championship, was the Associated Press Player of the Year in Virginia in both football and basketball. He obviously chose bouncy ball, pro bouncy ball eventually. But in the past, Iverson has said that if he had played football, he would have gone to Notre Dame and played for Touchdown Jesus there. And keep in mind, that's back when Notre Dame really mattered, and they still had good teams at Notre Dame, not like Notre Dame now, which is helter-skelter. So let us discuss the question. Are you going to go thumbs up or thumbs down on Allen Iverson being a better football player than he was at basketball? So I'm going to go first, and I'm going thumbs down on this. I am going thumbs down on this. Now, my observations, you've got Reinvent, Cannonball, and Mitch Jagger. And we will combine all of these things together and make the Baba Ganoush. We're going to make the Baba Ganoush. Now, number one. So I am providing a skeptical eye for the regular guy on this one. Anytime you start a diatribe by saying, not being cocky, not being arrogant, you always, 100% of the time, pivot to being cocky and arrogant. Now, part of being a top-level athlete is to be cocky and arrogant. Iverson's not a top-level athlete anymore. He's a retired athlete. He's a has-been, which is better than it ever was. Better than it ever was. Now, Iverson, listen, let me spell this out for you. He made the right choice. Period. Hard stop. Period. Hard stop. Now, as Iverson said, now that his playing days are long gone, like a house on the side of the road, Iverson, he's in the Basketball Hall of Fame, which is impressive until you realize everyone gets in the Basketball Hall of Fame. But he is a household name. And people who grew up watching Iverson reminisce about how amazing Iverson was in that era of pro basketball. But would that have been the case in football? I am a doubting talk show host. I am. There's an English idiom that comes to mind here. Don't reinvent the wheel. Iverson's NBA career was solid. It was solid, right? I mentioned a lot of volume of shots, percentage of shots not that great, but I love the way that Iverson played basketball. He played it with an edge to him. And playing in the NFL, he would not have been able to replicate that and not have been able to have the impact that he had as he did in the NBA. And the word for his NFL pursuit, which he's talking about, he would have been better at football if he'd gone to college and then the next level. Boondoggle. Boondoggle. That's the word, boondoggle. Simple word, boondoggle. Fun word, too, boondoggle. So the second thing here, in a parallel dimension, imagine, if you will, a world where Allen Iverson did not go play at Georgetown and instead said, I'm not going to play basketball. I'm going to go to South Bend, Indiana, and Notre Dame is where I'm going to go. And we know he was a high school stud in Virginia, a mobile quarterback. Here's what I see happening. I've got my magic 8-ball out. Iverson ends up dominating the college gridiron, but fails to impress NFL scouts. I'll tell you why. Iverson's frame would have given them cold feet. The answer listed at a generous 6 foot 165. Now, I covered the NBA when Iverson played for the Sixers, and I was around him a little bit, and I don't think he's 6 feet, and I don't think he's a $165. So I think both those numbers are on the high end, and he is below that. But remember also, here's the key part of this. It has only been recently that the NFL has opened themselves up to the pipsqueak quarterback. And Alligator Arms Murray, Kyler Murray in Arizona, who's realistically like 5'9", maybe 200 pounds, something along those lines, not what his listed weight is, what he really is. Now that Murray has been nothing more than a stat stuffer, a losing quarterback with the Cardinals, will the NFL continue to go down at these gimmick quarterbacks like Kyler Murray, the pint-sized quarterbacks? Iverson played, though, with a fearless abandon. That brand of basketball. He was a human cannonball. And as a result, he struggled to stay healthy from the physicality of mid to late 90s NBA, early 2000s. And you name an injury, he had it. Broken thumb, check. Shoulder dislocation, check. Fractured hand, done. Partially torn rotator cuff, done. Chip fracture right ankle, check. Broken toe, done. We can go on and on. And so that's in basketball. Crank that up several notches. As you know, you don't need me to tell you in football. Add a helmet, some shoulder pads, and 300-pound defensive monsters who are drooling to eat the quarterback for lunch. And even if you can overlook all of that, Iverson had a very strong distaste for practice. Not a game. We talked about practice and lifting weights. Tell me the NFL team that doesn't have a problem with their quarterback not practicing and not lifting weights. Those would have been the final nails in the pigskin coffin. Now, Iverson joked around and said he would have even lifted weights, and he was having fun with that. But that's Allen Iverson as a middle-aged man in his mid-40s. Allen Iverson, as a guy in his 20s, not so much. Not so much. And Iverson, by the way, in basketball, he did not like passing, which makes the fact that he was a quarterback all the more amazing, because I think that's part of the gig. You got to pass the football. He didn't like passing the basketball. All right, final point. So the thing that struck me about Iverson's comments on this podcast, and it goes back to something that we've talked about a lot. It's really like the lyrics from an old Rolling Stones song. It was Mitch Jagger who wrote, "You can't always get what you want." And a lot of this comes down to basic human psychology. And we are all hardwired in our lizard brain to want what we can't have. Whether it's in a relationship, the one that got away, the high school flame that wasn't into you, or the job that you wanted but you couldn't get. That's just how we're all wired. We want the thing that we can't have. As a rule of thumb, people don't like to be told that they can't have or can't do something that they want to do. And I've said this a little bit. And from what I understand, it's related to not wanting to be controlled by another human being, right? Especially in an arbitrary situation. It's unfair. You don't want to feel like it's unfair or whatnot. So it's why every athlete, my entire life, every athlete has wanted to be something else. Whether it's a musician or something along those lines. Every rock star wants to be a pro athlete, or now you've got TikTok star, which I guess you could be as an athlete. Also, why a successful NBA vet like Allen Iverson, daydreaming as a middle-aged guy about playing in the NFL, what could have been, right? You think back to that. You can't always get what you want. He sees how popular Iverson does the NFL is. He's like, well, I could have been the guy. The NFL's king. The NBA is popular, but the NFL's more popular. That could have been me. I could have been the guy.